Carl Sagan's influence on how we understand the universe can hardly be overstated. As a pioneer in astronomy, cosmology, and science communication, his work bridged the gap between complex scientific ideas and everyday people's imaginations. The television series Cosmos was not just a documentary but a cultural moment. It inspired millions to look up at the stars and wonder about their place in the grand scheme of things. But Sagan's story isn't just about his contributions to science, it's also about how he lived his life, constantly questioning, always in search of deeper truths. This dedication to inquiry led him to be critical of many established religious institutions, particularly their tendency to provide fixed, unchanging answers. For Sagan, the universe was far too vast, far too complex, for such certainty. He believed that understanding required skepticism, an open mind, and a willingness to follow the evidence wherever it might lead. Yet, despite his critiques of religion, Sagan was not entirely dismissive of spiritual traditions. In fact, one spiritual tradition that caught his attention was Buddhism. Sagan found aspects of Buddhism that aligned with his own values, especially its emphasis on inquiry, personal experience, and self-exploration. This might seem surprising at first glance. After all, how could a man so deeply rooted in science find common ground with a religion? But in Buddhism, Sagan saw something different, an openness to questioning, a lack of dogma, and a willingness to explore the nature of reality without demanding blind faith. This philosophical kinship between Sagan and Buddhism is where our exploration begins. The pillars of Sagan's scientific philosophy. At the core of Carl Sagan's worldview was a fierce commitment to the scientific method. For Sagan, science wasn't just a body of knowledge, it was a way of thinking, a process of questioning, testing, and refining our understanding of the world. He believed that every claim, no matter how comforting or deeply held, should be subject to scrutiny. This is why Sagan was such a staunch advocate for skepticism. Sagan's skepticism wasn't a rejection of all ideas, rather, it was a refusal to accept ideas without evidence. He recognized the dangers of dogma, whether religious or secular, and he warned against the human tendency to cling to comforting beliefs even when they don't hold up under scrutiny. In his view, organized religion often fell into this trap, offering fixed answers to life's biggest questions, answers that didn't change in the face of new evidence. In the demon-haunted world, Science as a Candle in the Dark, Sagan laid out his philosophy of science as a tool for dispelling ignorance and superstition. He argued that in a world filled with mystery, science was the best method we had for illuminating the truth. In this book, Sagan pointed out the dangers of believing in things without evidence, from superstitions to conspiracy theories to dogmatic religious beliefs. He warned that when people stop questioning, when they accept fixed answers without inquiry, they leave themselves vulnerable to manipulation and ignorance. This view was central to Sagan's critiques of organized religion. For example, creation myths found in religious texts, whether it be the Genesis story in Christianity or similar accounts in other religions, often stood in direct opposition to the scientific understanding of the universe's origins. The scientific evidence for the Big Bang, evolution, and the vast age of the universe contradicted the literal interpretations of these creation stories. For Sagan, this was a clear example of how religious dogma could impede the quest for knowledge. However, Sagan's critique of religion was not without nuance. While he was critical of religious dogma, he acknowledged that religion had played a significant role in human history. It had provided meaning, community, and moral frameworks for billions of people. But for Sagan, any belief system, whether religious or not, should evolve in light of new evidence. In his view, clinging to outdated ideas, simply because they are traditional or comforting, was a disservice to humanity's potential for growth and discovery. Buddhism's approach to inquiry and experience, unlike many Western religious traditions. Buddhism doesn't rely on the belief in a creator deity or an unchanging set of divine commandments. Instead, it offers a framework for personal exploration of reality, the mind, and existence itself. This is one of the reasons why Sagan found certain aspects of Buddhism appealing. It shares a kinship with the scientific method, Buddhism, particularly in traditions like Zen and Theravada, emphasizes direct experience over dogma. The Buddha himself encouraged his followers not to accept teachings blindly but to test them through personal experience. This approach resonates with the scientific method, where hypotheses are tested through experimentation and observation, rather than accepted on authority alone. The Kalama Sutta, one of the foundational teachings of Buddhism, is often cited as an example of this empirical approach. In it, the Buddha tells his followers, "Do not believe in anything simply because you have heard it. Do not believe in traditions because they have been handed down for many generations. But after observation and analysis, when you find that anything agrees with reason and is conducive to the good and benefit of one and all, then accept it and live up to it." This teaching aligns closely with Sagan's philosophy of questioning and evidence-based belief. Buddhism's emphasis on inquiry and personal validation of truth, rather than blind faith, was something Sagan could respect. In Buddhist practice, meditation and mindfulness are key tools for exploring the mind. These practices are designed to cultivate awareness, focus, and insight into the nature of one's thoughts and emotions. In a way, they can be seen as mental experiments, methods for observing the mind in action. Through meditation, practitioners learn to observe their thoughts without judgment, to investigate the nature of suffering, and to explore the transient, interconnected nature of reality. For Sagan, who was fascinated by the mysteries of consciousness, this aspect of Buddhism was particularly intriguing. He understood consciousness as a product of the brain's physical processes, but he also recognized that our subjective experience of consciousness was something worth exploring. Buddhism, with its long tradition of meditation and mindfulness, offered a different perspective on the mind, one that complemented scientific approaches to understanding the brain. Sagan's fascination with cosmology and the Buddhist universe. One of Carl Sagan's greatest passions was cosmology, the study of the universe's origins, structure, and ultimate fate. He spent much of his career grappling with the profound questions that arise when we contemplate the cosmos. How did the universe come to be? What is its ultimate fate? Are there other forms of life out there in the vastness of space? These questions are as old as humanity itself, and they're also central to many Buddhist philosophical discussions. In Buddhist cosmology, the universe is vast and cyclical. There is no definitive beginning or end, only cycles of creation and destruction, birth and death, that continue indefinitely. This conception of the universe is strikingly different from the linear, one-time creation event described in many Western religious traditions. But it shares some similarities with modern cosmological theories, such as the multiverse or the idea of a cyclic universe where each cycle begins with a new Big Bang. Sagan was fascinated by the idea of a universe without end. In his work, he often reflected on the sheer scale of the cosmos and humanity's place within it. In his famous Pale Blue Dot speech, he described how, from a cosmic perspective, Earth is nothing more than a tiny speck of dust in the vastness of space. This realization, that we are infinitesimally small in the grand scheme of things, echoes Buddhist teachings on impermanence and interconnectedness. In Buddhism, the idea of impermanence, anicca, is a fundamental truth. Everything is in a constant state of change, and nothing lasts forever. This includes not only our own lives but the universe itself. Similarly, Buddhist teachings on interconnectedness emphasize that all things are part of a larger whole, constantly influencing and being influenced by one another. These concepts resonate with Sagan's scientific understanding of the cosmos, where the forces of nature bind everything together in a vast, interconnected web. For both Sagan and Buddhist philosophy, this realization brings a sense of humility. In the face of the universe's immensity, we are small, fleeting, and interconnected with everything around us. This perspective can be both humbling and awe-inspiring, reminding us of our place in the cosmos and our shared responsibility to one another and the planet we inhabit. Science, spirituality, and the shared love for curiosity. At the heart of both science and Buddhism lies a deep sense of curiosity, a desire to explore, understand, and uncover the truth. For Carl Sagan, curiosity was the driving force behind all scientific inquiry. He believed that the act of asking questions, of probing the mysteries of the universe, was not only a scientific endeavor but a profoundly human one. And this, perhaps, is where science and spirituality overlap the most. Buddhism, too, encourages a spirit of curiosity. In Buddhist practice, mindfulness and meditation are tools for exploring the mind and reality. Through these practices, practitioners are invited to observe their own thoughts, feelings, and experiences with curiosity and without judgment. This kind of introspection is not unlike the scientific method, where careful observation and analysis lead to deeper understanding. Both disciplines emphasize the importance of questioning assumptions. In science, no idea is immune from scrutiny, no matter how widely accepted it may be. Similarly, in Buddhism, practitioners are encouraged to question their own beliefs, to investigate the nature of reality for themselves, and to seek insight through direct experience rather than relying on dogma or authority. This shared commitment to inquiry is one of the reasons Sagan found common ground with Buddhism. Both science and Buddhism, in their own ways, encourage us to be explorers, to delve into the unknown, to seek out answers, and to be open to new discoveries. For Sagan, the act of discovery itself was a kind of spiritual experience. In his writings, he often spoke about the emotional power of scientific discovery, describing it as a source of wonder and awe. In a way, Sagan saw science as a spiritual practice, not in the sense of a belief in the supernatural, but in the sense that it offers a path to deeper understanding and connection with the universe. Science, like spirituality, can inspire a sense of humility, reverence, and awe in the face of the mysteries of existence. Isn't it amazing how these two seemingly different approaches to understanding reality can come together in their shared love for exploration? Skepticism towards the supernatural, where Sagan drew the line. While Carl Sagan admired many aspects of Buddhism, he remained a skeptic when it came to its supernatural claims. Like many religions, Buddhism includes beliefs in reincarnation, karma as a metaphysical force, and the possibility of paranormal abilities such as clairvoyance or telepathy. As an empiricist, Sagan demanded rigorous evidence for any claims about the supernatural or paranormal, and he wasn't willing to accept these beliefs without it. In the demon-haunted world, Sagan emphasizes the importance of skepticism in countering irrational beliefs. He argues that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And this principle guided his approach to all supernatural or paranormal phenomena. While he respected the contemplative practices of Buddhism, he was cautious of accepting any metaphysical claims that could not be verified through scientific observation and evidence. Reincarnation, in particular, was a concept that Sagan found intriguing but ultimately unconvincing. The idea that consciousness could survive the death of the body and be reborn in another life is a central tenet of many Buddhist traditions. However, Sagan, who viewed consciousness as a product of the brain's physical processes, saw no compelling evidence to support this claim. He was open to exploring the mysteries of consciousness. But he remained skeptical of any explanation that ventured into the supernatural without sufficient evidence. Karma, too, was a concept that Sagan approached with caution. In its metaphysical sense, karma refers to the idea that one's actions in this life will determine one's circumstances in future lives. While Sagan appreciated the ethical implications of this belief, particularly its emphasis on personal responsibility, he was not convinced by its metaphysical underpinnings. For Sagan, any belief in cosmic justice or metaphysical cause and effect needed to be backed by evidence, and he didn't see that evidence in the case of karma. Despite his skepticism, Sagan didn't reject Buddhism outright. He recognized that, like any belief system, Buddhism had both valuable insights and questionable claims. His approach was one of cautious respect. He appreciated Buddhism's philosophical depth and its emphasis on personal inquiry, but he remained critical of its supernatural elements. In this way, Sagan exemplified the balance between open-mindedness and skepticism, qualities that are essential to both science and the pursuit of truth. The nature of consciousness, a meeting point between science and Buddhism. One of the most intriguing intersections between Carl Sagan's scientific worldview and Buddhism is their shared interest in the nature of consciousness. While Sagan approached consciousness from a materialist perspective, believing that it arises from the brain's physical processes, he was deeply fascinated by the mysteries of the mind. Buddhism, with its long tradition of meditation and mindfulness, offered a different approach to understanding consciousness, one that emphasized direct experience and introspection. In Buddhist practice, meditation is a tool for exploring the mind. Through mindfulness, practitioners observe their own thoughts, emotions, and sensations, gaining insight into the nature of consciousness and the self. This process of self-exploration can be seen as a kind of mental experimentation, where the mind becomes both the subject and the object of inquiry. For Sagan, who was always curious about the workings of the mind, this aspect of Buddhism was particularly intriguing. In recent years, neuroscience has begun to study the effects of meditation on the brain, and the findings suggest that meditation can lead to measurable changes in brain activity. This intersection of neuroscience and Buddhist practice highlights the potential for collaboration between science and spirituality in the study of consciousness. While Sagan didn't live to see many of these developments, he would likely have been interested in the ways that scientific research is beginning to validate certain aspects of Buddhist practice. Sagan's materialist view of consciousness didn't prevent him from appreciating the subjective experience of the mind. He recognized that, while science can explain the physical processes of the brain, there is still much to learn about the nature of subjective experience. This is where he saw value in practices like meditation, methods for exploring consciousness from the inside out. Sagan's legacy, the importance of an open mind. Carl Sagan's relationship with Buddhism teaches us an important lesson about curiosity and open-mindedness. While Sagan was a committed skeptic, he was also open to exploring different perspectives and ideas, even those that came from spiritual traditions. He didn't dismiss Buddhism simply because it was a religion. Instead, he recognized its value in encouraging inquiry, self-exploration, and a deep engagement with life's big questions. Sagan's approach to Buddhism, and to religion in general, was a model of how to engage with different belief systems in a thoughtful, respectful, and critical way. He didn't accept claims without evidence, but he also didn't reject ideas outright simply because they came from a spiritual tradition. Instead, he evaluated each idea on its own merits, always asking whether it aligned with the principles of inquiry, evidence, and reason. This balance between skepticism and appreciation is something we can all learn from. In a world where it's easy to fall into rigid thinking, whether that's religious dogma or scientific materialism, Sagan's openness to different perspectives reminds us of the importance of staying curious, questioning our assumptions, and remaining open to new possibilities. Conclusion: a shared journey of discovery. Carl Sagan's relationship with Buddhism was complex, thoughtful, and deeply rooted in his commitment to inquiry. While he was critical of religious dogma and supernatural claims, he found common ground with Buddhism in its emphasis on personal exploration, inquiry, and understanding the nature of the mind. Sagan admired the way Buddhism encouraged curiosity and open-mindedness, qualities that he believed were essential to both science and the pursuit of truth. In the end, Sagan's respect for Buddhism was not about agreeing with all of its metaphysical claims, but about recognizing the shared commitment to inquiry that both science and Buddhism represent. Both disciplines encourage us to explore the unknown, to question our assumptions, and to seek out deeper truths about the universe and ourselves. As we reflect on Carl Sagan's legacy, we are reminded that the search for understanding is a shared human endeavor. Whether through science or spirituality, the pursuit of knowledge, truth, and meaning is a journey that unites us all. And perhaps the most important lesson we can take from Sagan's relationship with Buddhism is this: the most profound discoveries are often found when we keep our minds open and our hearts full of wonder.